Cabernet tends to be the sort of Errol Flynn of the grape varieties.
One of Australia's leading beer judges.
People always ask, how do you get involved in sake and how does that connect to music?
Because wine is an adventure.
Conventional winemakers who just condemn all natural wine as faulty.
The prestigious title of Sake Samurai.
Looking at whiskey in more of an artful culinary way.
The difference between getting good quality fresh hops, it just translates straight through into the beer.
This is the Drinks Adventures podcast. I'm James Atkinson, and this is the show where I speak to some of the world's most exciting producers of beer, wine and spirits and uncover trends and issues in the drinks industry today. Hey folks, we're joined this episode of the show by Shawn Sherlock, founder of FogHorn Brewery in Newcastle, New South Wales. Founded in 2014 as a brewpub in Newcastle CBD, FogHorn is a company on the move. In August 2020, it took over the brewery formerly known as Hunter Beer Co. at Potter's Hotel in the Hunter Valley, a region better known for wine. The expansion has been made possible by FogHorn's partnership with Founders First, the craft beverages-focused investment vehicle that listed on the ASX in 2019 and now has stakes in 6 breweries and 3 distilleries. This is actually not the first time that FogHorn has opened a second venue, so Shawn and I discuss what he learnt from its previous expansion to open a tap room in Erina on the Central Coast. And as a veteran brewer with more than 20 years of industry experience, Shawn reveals some of the beer styles that he hopes to champion together with the expert brewers at Hunter Beer Co. that have now become part of the FogHorn team. First up though, we got talking about the dreaded C word. It wasn't too long before the onset of the pandemic that FogHorn launched its first beers in cans. I asked Shawn how important that packaged beer was in helping FogHorn through this difficult period. And you'll hear his response right after this. What I love about Australian craft spirits is that our distillers are truly free to experiment. We aren't governed by rules and traditions. That's why the flavour and character of Australian spirits is so unique. But it takes distilling prowess and another critical ingredient to bring these products to market, and that ingredient is Bintani. Bintani supplies distillers with malts of all colours, flavours and aromas. They have a leading range of yeast and other ingredients and the professional expertise to help distillers create the spirits of their dreams. Make Bintani your partner in taste and quality.
It was a lifesaver, to be honest, in terms of the business. You know, being completely venue-based, the King Street FogHorn venue is a 250-seat brew pub, and you know we pump in there. We're full. We're certainly in normal trading, we're full a lot of the time, and that's what really drives that business. And you know we employ a lot of people. We had 32 people on the books at 34, including all the casuals at the time that the COVID situation eventuated, you know, and decent rent, all those overheads that come with running an inner city venue. But we were, you know, trading well, all that sort of stuff. But bang, it, you know, March the 22nd, it's all shut down, and we were allowed to keep trading takeaway. But, you know, a lot of those casual staff had to let go. It was just a horrible experience. And that was in the pre-JobKeeper days, so we didn't know what was coming for them. My full-time team were fantastic and pulled in around me, and everybody worked, you know, went back to working 2 or 3 days on rosters to try and keep going, takeaway only. But we kept the place open and we kept trading, and that was great. But yeah, without the beer in trade and without the tinnies, I think we'd have been really, really struggling. Because yeah, once everyone was drinking at home, tinnies were critical, and the support from the local bottle shops and people, you know, buying cartons direct from the venue. We started doing basic, you know, ghetto delivery. We had our brewery van, and we started delivering pizza and beer in that. You know, like every brewery in the country did. It was a similar story for us. But yeah, it was certainly an experience.
It's quite fortuitous, really, to be here right as you're opening the Hunter venue or reopening it under the guise of FogHorn. Maybe you could just go back and sort of tell me how this opportunity presented itself.
Yeah, well, we started FogHorn Brewery back in 2015, and about 12 months ago, just over 12 months ago, I changed business partnerships. So I moved from my original business partner and partnered with Founders First, who are making a bit of a name for themselves with other brands in the craft sector. And as part of that, there was always a vision to start to grow the FogHorn brand and grow the wholesale side of the business. So actually, FogHorn traditionally had always been entirely brewpub focused and venue focused. We didn't sell any beer outside the venue. Very, very rarely, a few kegs here and there, but certainly no pack beer at all. And I had the confidence and the potential with the founders' partnership to start growing that brand and growing into the wholesale arena. My past with the Murray's brand had taught me a lot of lessons about the wholesale side of the business and some things, some strengths and weaknesses of that business model, I guess, and some things I wanted to avoid. And we've got our ducks in a row now between myself and my current partners, and we'd been looking for an opportunity to expand to another site within the Newcastle Hunter region. And this site here at Potter's in the Hunter became available, and I've known this site for a long time. I mean, I was drinking beer here way back in the very early 2000s, late 90s, before I started my commercial brewing career. I was an obsessive home brewer in those days. And that's how long this site has been producing craft beer.
Kind of not that well known outside of the area, though. There'd be plenty of craft beer enthusiasts in Sydney who wouldn't be aware of the history of this site. So for people who have been in the area, what's it kind of known for? What's its reputation?
It's a bit of a sort of a hidden gem, like you say, and it's been producing really high quality beer for a long time. But unusually for the first and the second wave of Australian craft beer, this was almost completely venue based. Again, it was a brew pub before brew pubs became the cool thing. So unlike most brands, like for example Murray's in my past, or Four Pines or Feral or whatever it might have been from the 2000s era, it was focused on brewing beer and selling it on site. So it didn't really package and sell off site. So its reputation and its brand didn't really grow much outside the region. But for people who have been around the craft beer industry for a while and people who have been craft beer lovers beyond the last few years, it's had a really strong reputation. Keith Grice and before him Luke Scott have produced some fantastic beer here over the years, and Keith in particular has been winning awards quietly. His dark lagers, his Bock, for example, would be one of the more awarded dark lagers in the country, certainly in recent years, at AIB level and AIBA level and so on. So, great site, and right in the Hunter Valley wine region. And this was brewing and being a footprint for craft beer, and a bit of a standard bearer back in the early days of the industry in what's a very wine-dominated region. There's been a few breweries open in recent years, but this site here has really punched above its weight for a long time. That said, it was starting to show its age a little bit, and what we're all about basically is taking the best parts of what's already here and bringing what we do well at FogHorn to the site, and hopefully using this site to help grow our brand and ultimately build a slightly bigger brewery and bring a packaging line in. And it gives us, we've got space here to grow in a way that the King Street site where FogHorn started, great brew pub, don't want to mess with it. Myself and my original business partner James took our time to really redevelop that building and make it into the great space that it's become. There's no value there in trying to force a bigger brewery and larger scale packaging and so on into that site. We can do that here.
Did that brewpub model play out the way that you were hoping?
By and large, yes. The brewpub model is a better cash flow model from a business point of view, in that you're producing your product and you're selling it through your own taps. You're kind of owning the means of production, distribution and exchange, to go back to the old Marxist terminology. But you're producing, selling all on site. And it's expensive to get into, and there's challenges with hospitality to run, absolutely. But
especially now.
Yeah. This is all, I should have prefaced all this. Yeah. This is the pre-Rona world, of course, yeah. COVID beside. But yeah, I mean, it's a model that is capital intensive up front, but then is able to pay its way. And it does then, from a beer purist's perspective, as long as your product is good and you know really quickly if it is or if it isn't, because the public is literally tasting it at your door next to your brewery, you get instant feedback. There's no sending it out to market and needing to have focus groups to find out whether things are working or not. It's instant. But if the product's good and what you're presenting to market is good, it's a sustainable business model, which ideally then puts you in a position to grow. And that's kind of really what we're doing now. And I think the early, really supercharged, quick growth of a brand to become national and that kind of thing is harder and harder to achieve. And for someone like me, maybe less and less desirable to achieve. I think you can really focus on the quality of your product and focus on the quality of your offering and get what you do down to an art that you're really proud of and can do really well, and then look to grow with the brewpub model. But that said, as someone who'd been a brewer and a head brewer for a bigger brand, and we had a bit of a national presence by the time I left Murray's. Hospitality, I thought I knew it going in, but I absolutely didn't. I didn't understand the challenges of running kitchens and all those sorts of fun things.
Did your original business partner bring that to the table?
No, his real strength was in the development side of things and getting the fit out done in the first instance and dealing with councils and that kind of stuff. I had done a bit of that with Murray's, but James, that's his background. He had a developer background and he was able to handle a lot of that side of the startup phase. We made our share of mistakes on the hospitality side early, certainly, as most people do when they start new venues and new, particularly restaurant sides of things. But having learnt a lot of those early lessons, I think we're kicking some goals there, which has, given us the confidence and the ability to grow into where we're sitting today in the Hunter with FogHorn Hunter.
You were saying it was really important that Keith and Daniel came with the deal. Why was that?
For a couple of reasons. One, the last thing I wanted to be doing, or founders wanted to be seen to be doing, was coming in, ripping everything out and starting again, in terms of what has been an established local business here. Secondly, Keith Grice, again, for those in the industry, he's a very well-known brewer and one of the better brewers in the country, if I would say. Keith would be horrified to hear me say that, but it's true. And he and I have known each other a long time. He used to brew beer in my backyard in the homebrew days back in the 90s and early 2000s. We've wanted to work together a long time. This was an opportunity that came up. And for a regional brewing business, there's only so many brewers out there. And I'm really, really, really particular with the way I like things done and haven't spent the time I've spent building a reputation or a brand, a personal sort of brand, if you like, in the industry for quality of beer, to then throw it away with not having the right team. So it was critical for me to have the brewing team available to me to help grow the brand. And yeah, we could have advertised and could potentially have brought people from out of the area, but this is a local brand. We've got local people working in the brand, and that's really important to us as well.
Now, going back, you expanded the FogHorn brand to open the Erina, let's call it a tap room, I suppose. Yep. And that was closed maybe a year or two ago now, probably around just before you did the deal with Founders.
It was about 12 months before.
Yeah, okay. Tell me about that experience. I'm assuming that, the reason that it's not there anymore is because it ultimately didn't end up working out for you.
It was really successful at various times of the week, but it wasn't successful 7 days. A lesson that we learnt, or certainly that I took out of that, was being closer to the business in terms of the rent and return on investment and so on, the leases. We took a lease on it, we took a punt on the location, and again, weekends, it was great. But the rest of the week, it was really difficult to get the numbers there to make the venue work properly. And we put a good few years into it and had some really good times there. I was quite proud of a lot of the things that we were able to achieve on that site there, but ultimately, when the lease came up for renegotiation, we decided not to renegotiate the lease. So it wasn't a situation of the thing going bust as such. It was just that, we were not doing the trade there as consistently as we wanted to and needed to, and certainly with agents talking about increases in rent, we just decided that no, maybe, and to be fair, we opened that roughly 12 months after we started FogHorn in King Street, and that was probably a case of us biting off more than we could chew a little earlier than maybe we should have. So a little bit of that. But that said, it wasn't one of those complete disaster experiences. It actually worked quite well. I mean, you've drunk plenty of beer there yourself, as you were saying. It was a good venue, and we did some really good things there. And the Central Coast is a great area. Again, demographically, though, that was part of the issue for us, was that there's kind of no real obvious centre on the Central Coast. There's quite a few people, decent population base, but it's really spread between Newcastle and Sydney. So to get the numbers that you need for that kind of a venue to really work and really pump, you're drawing from a wide area. And, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights, it was difficult to get them there.
Yeah, and tell me about the canned range.
Yeah, Young Americans IPA is our flagship IPA, and that was gold medal winner at the AIBA and so on, and it's our biggest selling takeaway beer, had been for some time. We were only doing growler and squealer takeaways at that point, but it was 2-1 our biggest seller. So we put that in can first, and it's been really successful for us. It's still our biggest selling packaged product. The Newey Pale Ales was the second beer we put in pack, and it's our second biggest seller, and it's going really well. The Sligo Extra Stout, it's a 7.6% ABV American stout. Again, it's won its share of medals and trophies at awards. It's a really high quality beer. Stouts are not something that everyone jumps at to put in pack. They sell reasonably well in winter, but not so much outside it. We've had it in pack for 12 months now, and it's really holding its place. In fact, across the COVID period anyway, I don't know whether isolation and shutdowns might turn people into dark beer drinkers or not, but it's probably our number 3 seller at the moment, and going really well. Certainly my model and my approach has just been brew whatever style you're going for and whatever ABV, whatever market you're going for with the beer. Brew something that you're really proud to stand behind and that is a really quality beer. And it is a little bit of a build it and they will come kind of an approach, and you don't always get it right. But if you put something out there that's quality and that is really full flavoured, different to to what else is on the market, but still drinkable to the point that if someone wants to have more than one of a 6.8% beer, their palate isn't so wrecked by the first glass that they can't come back for a second. That's the ethos behind my brewing the whole way through, whether it was with Murray's or with FogHorn, is to have big flavour and big aroma and innovative beers and different beers, but drinkable beers. That's really what I try and do, and consistent. I think that's why a beer like Young Americans has been successful, because, it's not your go-to beer for your mainstream lager drinker, but if you're a craft lover and you want that IPA character, it's got it. The bitterness, like I said, helps make it that little bit more drinkable. People don't think of bitterness in that way, but it is really important. I think beers without a requisite level of bitterness, depending on style, become really cloying, and cloying hinders drinkability as much as bitterness does. So it's about getting that balance right. But yeah, no real science to it, but for us, that's how it's worked out.
Sure. How do you see the beer scene evolving in Newcastle? I know that Modus are planning to open there. Do you kind of see that there's room for some other venues?
Absolutely. There's a couple of other brands and venues that are certainly pre-coronavirus. We're talking about opening and talking about coming. I know Modus definitely are. Newcastle, and I'm the proudest Newcastle local there is, but Newcastle has punched above its weight in craft beer for a long time. I mean, again, back in the Murray's days when we were building that brand, and when Murray's was at its strongest, per capita we sold more beer into Newcastle than other markets, even Melbourne. I mean, we were strong in Melbourne at the time. We would sell more actual litrage there, but in terms of percentage of population, Newcastle was stronger. So there's a really strong beer drinking culture there, but there's also contrary to what the outside world sort of sees about Newcastle, it's got quite a discerning beer palate. That people will take a few more risks locally on their beers, and will approach craft and full flavoured, interesting beers in venues and in areas of town that you might not expect. There's better penetration of craft into the western suburbs of Newcastle than there is in other cities.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I guess being a working class town to start with, it's a beer culture and always was. Traditionally, and growing up in Newey, dark beer was always really strong. Really strong homebrewing community in Newcastle. I'd reckon Canberra's probably got the strongest homebrewing community in the country, and I reckon Newcastle would probably be a close second. And they couldn't be more different cities from a demographic point of view. So I don't know exactly why that is, but there's just more acceptance that beer isn't just pale mainstream lager. So back in the earlier days when we were really fighting that anti-lager battle, which we're not so much doing these days, Newcastle had already kind of won it, because beers like Tooheys Old and dark ales were strong in Newcastle. Stouts, porters, the coal mining tradition maybe had something to do with it. Once people can approach a dark beer, you're halfway there to getting them to trying other styles, in my experience. If their beer world has been totally dominated by whether it's VB or Carlton in Victoria or Tui's New in New South Wales or, 4X in Queensland, if that's what they know in beer, it's a big step for them to come across and drink some of the more full-flavoured products. But if they're already drinking dark beer, which in Newey with beers like Tui's Old back in the day they were, maybe it opened them up to be a bit more receptive. I don't know. But yeah, if you talk to Corey Crooks from the Grain Store, when he opened the Albion, which was his venue before the Grain Store, he and I worked, certainly I was, in my Murray's days, had a fair bit to do with him in that period at the Albion, and he slowly but surely, that pub was one of the roughest, most mainstream pubs in the roughest area of town in Newcastle. It was right in the wharf area, right in the docks. And he took that on and slowly but surely just started replacing all of the mainstream taps until it was 100% craft. And back in the Murray's days, we were selling the original Nirvana Pale Ale, and when it first became Angry Man Pale Ale, that was his go-to Pale Ale in that venue, and we sold lots of kegs. And this is in the, people get very excited about selling as they should, the Stone and Wood Pacific Ales and the XPAs and so on in the current market. I'd put it to you that Angry Man was a much more hop-forward and assertive and bitter and cranky little beer than they are, and yet, the high-vis crowd would sit there in the front bar at the Albion knocking back plenty of Angry Man back in the day. And that's a difference with Newcastle to other craft beer markets that I've seen.
This episode of Drinks Adventures is supported by Fever Tree Premium Mixers, the mixer of choice in the world's best bars and restaurants. Right now, I'm enjoying Fever Tree's smoky ginger ale as the perfect accompaniment to some of my favourite bourbons and whiskies.
Where do you want to take the beers? Do you have any ambitions of doing anything like barrels and all that sort of thing?
Absolutely, and that's another great attraction to this site. Again, at King Street, we haven't gone down that track. I'm a real purist with brewing in general and with the barrels, Belgian styles and the bigger aged beers. Again, in the Murray's days, we did some of the earlier barrel-aged beers in the market, and I was really proud of those beers. But I'm not really set up to do them consistently and well at King Street, so we've just decided not to do them, rather than do a half-assed version. And we could sell plenty of it. There's so much excitement about saying that something's barrel-aged or something's soured or whatever, that people sometimes buy the beer on the excitement of the branding rather than on what's actually in the glass. I just decided not to do that at King Street because we weren't really set up to do it well. Here, we've literally got barrels, we've got space, so absolutely, there's a barrel program coming. And again, Keith Grice here, he and I have both been playing with barrel-aged beers for a long time. So we've got a few runs on the board, and I think we'll do it properly, we'll give it the time it takes. We're not going to do the same type of thing, but I look at what Will's doing with Van Diemen Brewery down in Tassie, and I look at what Topher's done with Wildflower and so on, and what Will Irving was doing and Brendan with their barrel program in Ferrell, that you give things the time that they need and you do it properly, and the results are spectacular. You rush into it, you try and push it out to market quickly, and you end up with some pretty average product. I'm not about average product.
How do you feel about Kettle sours?
I hate them. With a passion. No, that's a simplified answer. I've drunk some really high quality, good Kettle soured beer.
There's a lot more uninteresting ones though out there, aren't there?
That's really what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
And that's really hit and miss. You can produce high quality Kettle soured products, absolutely. Not saying you can't. And I've drunk plenty of them, but I'm a real fan of wild brewers and spontaneous fermentations and all the rest of it. Love that product. Belgian brewing in particular, and that Belgian tradition is what really excites me about brewing. It's what really floats my boat. I've probably made more of a name for myself brewing bigger dark beers and big IPAs and so on back in the day, but the beers I'm consistently most proud of back in the Murray's times and with FogHorn have been our Belgian-inspired brews. But, it takes a bit of time, particularly with the wild brews, to get them right. You've got to be able to blend, you've got to... it's not something you can turn around in a month. And if you try and turn it around in a month, you end up with some pretty mediocre product. Most of the time. Again, the caveat is there that some people do it well and seem to be able to produce better quality than others. But yeah, as a generalisation, kettle souring is not for me.
Have you done, I saw there's a Saison in there, but have you done a lot of Belgian-style beers in the FogHorn era?
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, they don't, because it's a brew pub, they're consumed on site. But at one stage there, we had 5 Saisons on at the same time, 5 variations. We've done a lot of Belgian styles, and people have this view that you can't sell them. Outside for one of it's a term I don't really like, but sours in inverted commas, wild brews, whatever you want to call them, they've got some popularity behind them at the moment as a general style. But the Belgian tradition and the classic Belgian styles are not, they're not cool at the moment.
The Belgian Golden Strong Ale, for example.
We brew some crackers, mate. If I do say so myself. Next time you're up, we'll make sure there's some for you. And again, an attraction of working with Keith is that same thing. He's brewed some really great ones here. I really can't wait for 12 months down the track to see what Keith and myself and Joe Lappin, who's been working with me now for the last few years at King Street, and Daniel here at FogHorn Hunter. The four of us together are going to produce some really cracking beers. And you've got brewers in charge making beer-related decisions. Okay, it's a marketplace. We've got to have beers to sell to keep the business alive. But, I'm a really passionate advocate for not dumbing things down. Okay, not every beer needs to be a 10% Imperial Stout. You've got to have beers that are for every occasion, and session beers are really important. Love my Pilsners, love my sessionable Pale Ales, etc. But let's have good ones.
Obviously, there's a few difficult months, maybe a difficult year, maybe longer ahead for the whole industry right now. How optimistic are you about how 600 breweries we've currently got are going to fare through this difficult period?
Right as we speak right now, obviously in Melbourne, it's horrific for the industry, what's going on down there. It's running a venue that has been through one lockdown. I know how hard that was going into it again. I dread that. And as we speak, we've had a few cases in Newcastle in the last few weeks, and everyone's really jumpy because we're really worried about it coming back and going into that lockdown again. I always have been an optimist for the industry. I'm not one of those people running around saying the sky's falling because there's too many breweries. I think while ever the brewery has a reason to be. So while ever there's a passionate person behind it that really importantly is also a really great brewer that can produce high quality product, that's producing it for a reason, that has a reason beyond just, I think this might be an easy way to make $1. There's nobody that's been around the industry for more than 8 minutes that thinks it's an easy way to make $1. It's absolutely not. But the people that survive and that ultimately do go on to make $1 and that can make a career out of it and be around the industry for more than 5 minutes are people that are passionate, that are skilled, that are producing quality product with a point of difference, something to add to the drinks adventure. And I think there's plenty of room for growth still. That, though, is in a normal environment. Where there's room for growth in the COVID environment, I don't know. It's too early for me to really say. I think the only positive light out of it all has been pack product that, because of shutdowns and because of people being nervous to go out and so on, drinking at home, selling pack has grown a little. And if you're in that market, that's been a bit of a lifesaver. But for all of us with venues and for those of us that are reliant on draft beer, on keg beer, it's been very, very hard. And I can't see that changing in the immediate future. Yeah, you've got to be optimistic and think we'll come out of it. And when we come out of it, I think good breweries will always have a place. Success in our sector is being able to survive and to make a living and to be comfortable and happy in what you're doing. Success doesn't need to be defined by being a national brand and starting to export to the world. And, success can be defined by that. And the bigger members of our industry and some of the guys that have been recently bought out and so on, great, that's a model of success, but it's not the only model. And, I think sometimes people need to go back and look at why they got into the industry a bit in the first place and what it was that was that passionate driver that got them there, and look at what success might really mean to them going forward. And if it's having that comfortable life, being able to pay the bills, being able to produce a product that you're really proud of, being able to have that artistic connection to your product. For all the science that we focus on with beer and brewing, and science is vital to what we do, the thing that gets me out of bed every day is coming up with the new recipes. For want of a better term, the artistic side of what we do. It's the innovation, it's on. If the trade-off for that is that you're not a multi-millionaire and you're not building a TUI scale brand, well, we don't all have to be that size. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be ambitious, but there's not just one model of success, I guess.
Sure. And Shawn, where else can we find the beer?
At the moment, we're in all of the best local independent bottle shops, so in Newcastle and the Hunter. And just recently we've started to sell a little bit in the local area through some of the Woolworths and Coles stores. We're not state ranged or nationally ranged or anything like that, but we have got a presence in local BWS and Dan Murphy's and local small presence in some of the local liquor lands and vintage cellars, that sort of thing. You can buy online, again, through some of the local Newcastle and Hunter bottle shops they've got. So I know Ties Hill Cellars and Warner's at the Bay, for example, they're just two that come to mind that have quite strong online presences in the local Newcastle and Hunter area that you can order. And they'll ship out. But also we sell in Sydney through Beer Cartel and Craft Cartel, and we've done a little bit with Bucket Boys as well, again, that you can buy online through those. So part of the project of taking on FogHorn Hunter here is to grow, not just grow the brand, but also literally to build a new brewery and bring a new packaging line in, which gives us more volume, which ultimately will see us be able to sell a little bit more into Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane. But it's not a race to get there. We're going to do it right and do it sustainably and do it so that when the beer gets to those markets, it's in good shape and it's quality product that is as good as if they were buying it in Newcastle close to the source.
Well, Shawn, congratulations on the new venue and best of luck with everything. Best of luck with COVID and best of luck with
Thanks, James.
all your future ventures.
Thanks, mate, and thanks for the opportunity and thanks for coming up to Newcastle on the Hunter, mate. Always good to have people such as yourself up here.
Cheers.
The Drinks Adventures podcast is produced by me, James Atkinson, with additional production and mixing by Dave Robertson. You can find complete transcripts, links, and other information on the show at drinksadventures.com.au. You can follow me on all social media platforms at @ByJamesAtkinson, like my Facebook page, James Atkinson Drinks Adventures, to be kept informed of podcast giveaways and other news about the show. The Drinks Adventures podcast needs your support as listeners. Please do us a favour and leave an honest review and rating for the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. We love hearing your feedback and it helps inform other people this is a show worth listening to. Or simply drop us a line at hello@drinksadventures.com.au.